Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Stacy Ajum, and I'm the marketing manager here at Siegel Scientific. Today's webinar, Updating Your BarTender System Database to BarTender 2019, will be hosted by our Senior Product Marketing Manager, Michael Leo, and also our Solutions Consultant, Minnie Castro. A little bit of housekeeping. This meeting is being recorded, but you are on mute. So if you do feel uncomfortable with technically being recorded, please drop off at this time. And just to let you know, we will be sending out the webinar recording and presentation slides if you decide to drop off. And we'll be answering your questions live at the end. So in the Q&A or the question chat pane, go ahead and drop your question right now about the topics, and at the end of the webinar, we'll be sure to answer them. And if we can't answer them at the end of the webinar, no worries, we'll send out an email follow-up. And while you're at it, go ahead and opt in for our communication so you can know what's going on with BarTender software, and also sign up for our future webinars. And if you can't hear us, just go ahead and double check your settings and make sure that that microphone is good to go. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Michael.
Thanks a lot, Stacy. Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time today to attend our webinar. We're going to start off by taking a quick look at our agenda. First, we'll quickly review what's new in a key component of BarTender, the BarTender System Database. We'll then have Manny take us through a typical user installation and look at how to assess a current BarTender System Database installation. And then Manny will finally cover best practices and tips for updating the BarTender System Database as someone moves to BarTender 2019. And finally, as Stacy mentioned, we will answer as many questions as we can in our remaining time. Before we begin, let me talk a little bit about BarTender 2019. It's available in 4 editions: Enterprise, Automation, Professional, and Starter. The Enterprise edition is focused on businesses that have regulatory or compliance needs and includes advanced tools like document management, centralized printing, and management for entire organization across multiple locations. For the Automation edition, you now receive all of the different automation options, including combining forms, actions, and system integrations. Professional edition is primarily focused on connecting label design to external databases and selecting or inputting data at print time through configurable data entry forms. And finally, but not least, the new Starter edition is our entry-level offering for small businesses and departments for simple label creation and printing. Note that each higher edition contains all of the features of the editions below it. BarTender 2019 is compatible with the latest Windows versions, and it has a greatly simplified installation process that involves a single BarTender software program and a product license key code that you can use to activate the BarTender software at the right edition level. And finally, the different BarTender 2019 editions are licensed by number of printers used now. Next slide. Before we begin, let me quickly summarize why you should update to our latest software release, BarTender 2019. There are a couple of major reasons to update. First, as you probably are aware, 10.1 is end of life in December 31st, 2020. That's a couple of months away, the end of this year. You will no longer be able to get technical support for it. Also, 10.1 is only compatible with Windows version 10, version 1803, released in July of 2018, and could be a major security issue. Even if the PC is not directly connected to the internet, it could be a security risk by being on your company network. The second reason for updating for BarTender 2019 is it provides a whole bunch of new capabilities in several areas, including intelligent templates, which allow you to produce a wide variety of flexible label and document designs without having to create and maintain hundreds of separate documents. We've made designing data entry forms at BarTender easier and more intuitive, including supporting easier database record and printer selection directly in the forms themselves. We allow you to now create PDFs without any third-party driver. And as you saw at our last webinar last month, you can remotely print from any web browser, from any laptop, PC, or device, smartphone, iOS, and Android device, with our new print portal. And our new administration console replaces the security center and consolidates a number of features and capabilities, including not only user security, but printer management, redirection, failover, and it also covers license management, electronic signatures, and document encryption. And it also allows you to manage and deploy integrations. And finally, some more reasons to update the BarTender 2019. Our powerful integration builder platform allows you to easily work with your existing business systems and new business systems. It supports several different trigger methods and data formats, including XML, TCP/IP, and over 70 different action types. We have our .NET SDK available for even tighter integration. And we've added many new database connection options, including Azure SQL databases, XML files, MySQL, and many others, including the ability to create your own database. So at this point in the presentation, I'm now going to turn it over to Manny. He'll now give you some more details on the BarTender System Database and BarTender 2019.
Thanks, Michael. So we'll begin with what's new in the BarTender System Database and also what the system database actually is, just in case you're new to it. The BarTender System Database is the central data storage for applications in the BarTender suite, and its use has significantly grown in the last few versions of BarTender. The BarTender System Database allows you to store and review events occurring in your BarTender environment, such as warning and error messages, information on each print job, including print driver version, data that printed, an image of the label that printed. In addition to that, you can also reprint previously printed jobs. You can store templates and other files via Librarian. By default, we always keep or save old revisions, allowing you to revert back to it at any point. You can build workflows that, when paired with a security profile, allow you to set who is allowed to put files into a certain state, such as only admins or power users, for example, can set a label to print on a production integration. You can now also have what's called global data fields, where a serial number, or any value really, can be shared across as many labels as you'd like. It's not specific to a printer, label type, user, or PC. It's just a piece of data that can be shared across your network or across your labels. The default BarTender System Database uses Microsoft SQL Server Express 2014, which is free but has a 10 GB limit. Also, it does have to be Microsoft SQL Server for the BarTender System Database. No other platform is supported. If you want multiple computers to share a centralized database or have a single computer logging a high volume of jobs, you might also want to use your own database instance to not have to worry about that 10 gigabyte Microsoft restriction. Remember that you need to have a central system data. In order to have a central system database, you will need the enterprise edition of the software. An automation license can only log to and use the local BarTender System Database, as in local to that PC or server. And here is at a very high level what a deployment of BarTender Enterprise looks like. Note that each BarTender client has all the companion applications installed, meaning you can have all your servers and clients sharing a BarTender license. As we're licensed by printer count, this is fine. You can then just have this configuration and have a central license server and a central BarTender System Database. In BarTender 2019, the system database config and all its settings are actually now located inside the companion application administration console. Note that unless you go through the advanced install options, we now install a local system database by default. This is usually fine if you have an enterprise, unless you have an enterprise license and want a central system database instead. If that's the case, be sure to go through the advanced installation options and uncheck that box if so during your install. The BarTender System Database in BarTender 2019 is required for Print Portal, the web print server successor, any of the logging features we talked about, the reprinting functionality, the use of Librarian and all its revision control and workflow features, and lastly, for the ease of centralized security. So no need to share a network XML file anymore or configure on a per client basis. If you're already a Librarian user or logging to a system database, you might be interested to see that Librarian can now be used as a scan directory for the new integration platform. Print Portal also supports multiple folders, and of those, you can mix standard Windows folders and Librarian directories. We also have a new message library. So especially in our pro services engagement, we found this very useful to build and test new integrations. You can replay integration events, and in general, the error and warning messages are much more descriptive and specific now. Lastly, we also have selective image logging, such as only logging the first and last image in a given job. This helps keep the size of your system database lean if that's all you need for your audit scenarios. The system database also has full API support, meaning all print job statuses, message logs, revisions, and workflows in Librarian can all be accessed programmatically. We've had some users and partners leverage the system database API to build custom dashboards tailored to a specific business or use case, and these have been application-based and even web-based. And with the BarTender API or system database API, you can leverage all this. You can refer to your BarTender help, which has documentations and examples of all this. And with BarTender 2021 Preview 2, there's even more to leverage when using the BarTender System Database. Librarian is more closely integrated with Print Portal. You can now add and review comments on any Librarian file. You can view the revision history of any file. You can compare documents or revisions of those files. And remember, as this is Print Portal, you can now do this from any browser. You don't need to have BarTender installed to be able to make these changes. And in Librarian, there are much more powerful workflow tools, as you'll see. When you send email, you can configure it so you can have email sent out to a certain person or group to approve changes, build in decision points into your workflows, and more. And all of this really is made possible by the BarTender System Database.
Wow, this is some good stuff here, Manny. And now this is awesome. Please don't get me wrong, but where would I start with migrating my system database? I don't like, for example, if I have like sensitive data that I don't and can't afford to lose, if I upgrade, will it make me lose my data? Like, where can I start?
Yeah, makes sense, Stacy. So here's how we can go about that. So we'll want to begin, as usual, with our upgrades and migrations by first assessing our current deployment. In migrating the BarTender System Database, you're really going to end up wanting to, or sooner or later, doing so, migrating your whole print process over to BarTender 2019. Usually you're not going to migrate just the system database over and call it good, right? So it's kind of a bigger picture. So here's our scenario. We're running a BarTender version 10.1 instance. And note, you can apply these best practices to any version of BarTender you're coming from, really as far back as version 8 or 8.01 specifically of BarTender. This deployment of BarTender has labels stored in Librarian. We're printing via Commander integration and on the clients as well for on-demand labels. We're using the BarTender System Database for our Librarian files that are stored in there, and we're also logging print job messages and statuses. Our goal is to move this environment over to BarTender 2019. So here's how we go about assessing this. So we'll want to assess what's going on both on the server and client sides and what files we're using. In the case of labels, these will be .btw extensions, and these might be located once again on the server, on the client, or in Librarian. These files contain all the settings such as our label sizes, the printers we're using, any database connections, our forms, VB scripting, etc. We want to gather the integration files as well. In the scenario we just mentioned, this will include the settings of the folder we're monitoring for the trigger files, the extension of those files for our integration, what kind of data might be in those trigger files, and what the integration is to do with those trigger files post-detection. We'll want to look for any database or images our labels may have as well, or just in general, any other dependencies of our print process. While most of these locations are personal preference, as in each user stores them wherever they feel is best, you might want to try the inet pub directory if using web print server, your documents, or another tip, review your old commander trigger files if applicable to your use case, of course, right? They likely have the directory of the label they're calling to print via the integration. If at all, if all else fails, just ask the people that use the software day to day. It's really not uncommon for us in our engagements as we go through and upgrade customers to just have to pull in the boots on the ground and say, hey, can you show us how you print? And that's part of our list making process, so to speak. And then also know what server am I logging to as far as the BarTender System Database. So do you have a central BarTender System Database or is it decentralized? So we'll want to identify all that. We'll then want to take all our findings and make a list as usual. So this is going to be a list of everything we need to copy over or back up or at least react to in some way or another. So these are going to fall into 3 different categories. They're either files or folders in a Windows directory somewhere. This means that they need to be copy and pasted eventually. So we'll need to identify those files. So this will be your labels, databases, images, etc. The second category is going to be these are printers. So we'll need to assess what printers we're using, the naming convention, and then be prepared to install them on a new server or PC. Lastly, and for this webinar, most importantly, it's our system database, which will be located in a Microsoft SQL Server instance somewhere. We'll want to take note of the server, where it is hosted, and the name of the database. So if we're not sure where that system database is, you can go to your start menu. This does have to be a client that is actually logging or actively logging. So you want to go to one of those BarTender clients or servers, and you'll want to go to your start menu, all programs, BarTender, system database wizard, and 10.1 and prior. It's in the admin console in 2016 and up. And this dialog will tell you where the server name and the database instance. So for now, just add that server name and add that database instance to your list. So now we're going to follow the best practice, similar to what we do in our pro services engagement, and install Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. And this has to just be on a PC or server that has the ability to connect to our database instance. It doesn't necessarily have to be on the SQL server itself or on the integration server that's hosting the BarTender System Database. So this tool will allow you to connect to a SQL instance. It can be downloaded from Microsoft's website, and it is a free tool. And what we're going to do is we're going to connect to the PC or server hosting the system database, and just going to enter the actual server name. And we're going to right-click our database. Once we've done that, we're going to right-click database, the database folder specifically, and expand that. Right-click, go to tasks, and then backup. We then want to select where we want to save our full backup. And note the term full backup as well. The result of this will be a .bak file, which can later be imported into a new SQL Server instance. Now, you may also know that BarTender has a built-in backup and restore function as well. We'll want to use Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio instead, as that tool is designed, the BarTender tool that is designed for disaster recovery scenarios. So where we're exporting and importing to the same version of BarTender and only need the logs migrated. As we need the full system database, including the librarian files, we're going to follow these best practice and use Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. Note that if you're using a central SQL server hosted on a non-BarTender PC, you can also just duplicate the system database there or ask your DBA to do so, and then connect to the duplicate from BarTender 2019, which we will cover in a few slides.
Awesome. So I have my list, and I think I have a good idea of how to back everything up. So I can leave my existing version running, right? Or what should I do?
Correct, Stacy. You can now leave your version 8, 9, 10, 2016, whatever that may be. It does apply to all those versions running. Per our best practice, we'll now stand up a new environment and move everything over. So when upgrading BarTender, we suggest the following best practice of setting up a new environment. And the reason that we do that is we're trying to get away from the scenario where you take down a tested production system and then replace it with an untested one. As with most BarTender deployments, there are a ton of moving parts, especially outside of BarTender at the network, application, and even the hardware level. So we have to note that each BarTender deployment is actually a little different compared to others out there. And we want to make sure that all these moving pieces, not just BarTender, are tested and configured correctly. This especially applies for running any sort of integration. We essentially want to do a systems check and validate to some degree our dev environment before we take any prod system down, giving us the best chance at success and the biggest time window for testing as well. So especially if we're dealing with integrations, and this is how we go about it. So especially when we're dealing with integrations, we need to make sure that we have the correct installer. We need the architecture of the BarTender installer to match your OS. So in general, except for a few very specific scenarios, no installing BarTender 32-bit on a 64-bit, once again, especially when integrating. Then we want to make sure we go to the Siegel Scientific website and get the latest build of BarTender. I noticed already in the chat some of the questions that was asked is BarTender 2019 R3 the latest one? And it is not. So 2019 R9 is the latest one. So that would be a good example of why you want to go out to our website and grab the latest patch. So once we've downloaded the latest patch of BarTender for the version that we're going to install, which in this case is BarTender 2019, we're going to go through the installation. We'll immediately come across a decision to make here. We need to activate. So now, if you purchased a new BarTender installation outright, go ahead and just activate. If you are upgrading from a version of BarTender that has maintenance, you'll need to make sure you're aware of the provisional activation that we offer. Your provisional activation will allow you to have the BarTender version you're coming from and BarTender 2019 installed and activated on this at the same time on your network, just not on the same PC or server. This activation is provisional, of course, per the name, and pending your addition, you'll have 30 to 180 days to test BarTender 2019. Before that period is up, you must deactivate one of the versions or the new BarTender 2019 version will deactivate itself. Then we want to move on to installing our print drivers. Remember, for the most seamless upgrade and usually just kind of best practice, we want to make sure that we name the printers the same name as they were on the old PCs and servers. Then we can go ahead and copy over all our commander task lists, our BarTender labels, our databases, etc. And we'll want to pay attention to the folder structure. So depending on your specific ERP integration, your specific scenario, or maybe even just what your users are accustomed to, nesting the files in a different folder structure might result in remapping, retraining, and just general changes that might not be needed. One last thing, pay attention or note what kind of user you'll be using to connect to either the new or migrated system database. From my experience, we usually go with SQL users. That's just what seems to work best long-term. Windows users change, people leave the company, things like that. Permissions change. SQL users are a little bit more sturdy, we found out, or consistent, I should say, we found out. So regardless though, the two options are going to be SQL users and Windows users, and you'll need to access the BarTender System Database. And remember that that's specific. We don't need absolute outright access to every database instance. This is very specific to the BarTender System Database instance that we're hosting. So once our software is installed and activated, printers are installed, and our files are copied over, we'll want to bring over our backed up system database. For this, once again, we'll be using SQL Server Management Studio. So we'll want to connect to the server that is going to be hosting our BarTender System Database, and know that that may not even have BarTender running on it in some scenarios. We then want to navigate to the database folders once again and right-click. We're going to click on Restore Database and restore or import the full backup we did of our previous version system database. You're going to be looking for that .bak file. Once again, this applies to any recent version of BarTender, really as far back as version 8. And one more thing, I guess, that I'm going to add to that is this whole process or exercise of backing up and restoring databases. It's not particular to BarTender System Database in the SQL world. So if you do have a on-site DBA or a resource as such that is similar to that, these terminologies or this request would not be foreign to that person. You can definitely request it, and they should be able to make sense of what it is that you're requesting. So now once that's complete, we can go to all our PCs that are going to be connecting to this system database. Remember that if it is not local to the PC, the automation edition won't be able to connect to it. You do need the enterprise edition of BarTender to connect to a central system database. On those PCs or clients, PCs or servers, excuse me, we're going to then go to the administration console, select the system database option on the left, click on the blue letters on the right that say System Database Wizard. You're going to want to select or opt in to connect to an existing system database, and using the SQL or Windows credentials you configured previously, select by name your system database. And a few last things to note here. Remember that you can always just start a new fresh log. You don't have to migrate your system database over to get this new functionality. It's totally okay to just back that up and have it for the purposes of if you get audited or you're in an industry that that's required, and just start logging a new or start a new instance. Note that you'll need to connect to the system database following the process mentioned on this slide on all your BarTender servers and PCs, or build a silent install connection string and deploy it that way. Also, there are a lot of BarTender deployments out there, and each one is somewhat unique. If you feel you can't take this on, feel free to reach out to your BarTender reseller or directly to us at Siegel Scientific. And with our pro services team here, we're happy to help out on this. And with that, thanks as always, and I hand it off back to Mike.
Great, thanks, Manny. That was a great deep dive into BarTender System Database. And all the great tips and tricks on how to best upgrade. I'm going to end our presentation today by quickly recapping the reasons why you should update to BarTender 2019 and the next steps that you can take. As mentioned, there are a couple major reasons to update to BarTender 2019. First, 10.1 is end of life at the end of this year, December 31st, 2020. You will no longer be able to get technical support for it. And as well, 10.1 is only compatible with older Windows 10 versions and could be a major security issue. The second reason for updating to BarTender 2019 is the new BarTender System Database and all the new features and capabilities that it supports, including intelligent templates, which allow you to produce a wide variety of flexible label and document designs without having to create and maintain hundreds of separate documents. Intelligent templates, which I just mentioned. We've also added many new database connections, including Azure SQL databases, XML files, MySQL, and many others, including the ability to create your own database. We now allow you to create PDFs without any third-party driver. And we've made designing data entry forms in BarTender easier and more intuitive, including supporting easier database record and printer selection directly in the form themselves. Our powerful integration builder platform now allows you to easily work with your existing business systems and new business systems. It supports several different trigger methods and data formats, including XML, TCP/IP, and over 70 different action types. We also have our .NET SDK, which Manny mentioned, for even tighter integration. And the new print portal in BarTender 2019 and in BarTender 2021 Preview 2 provides the ability to print from any web browser, and it's integrated and works with librarian workflows. And finally, the new administration console replaces Security Center, and it consolidates a number of user, printer, and license management features and capabilities. So what are the next steps to take? We recommend contacting us or your local reseller to see how you can update to BarTender 2019. You can also download the BarTender 2021 Preview 2 release to try it out from our website, siegelscientific.com. If you need to renew your maintenance and support, you can contact us or your local reseller. Make sure to ask about our business stability and customer loyalty promotions for our maintenance and support packages. And remember, when you are on an active maintenance and support package, you can enjoy free updates or upgrades to the next any newer version of BarTender software. You can also access the customer portal to get an estimate or quote for your maintenance and support renewal. If you need extra technical assistance or help, our professional services team is also available, which Manny is the leader of. Many of our partner resellers also have technical staff, though, available to help with the update. And finally, you can always visit the BarTender community website. We have a dedicated page and section for updating from 10.1 or older to BarTender 2019, including tips, videos, documentation, and technical documents. And finally, if you like this webinar or the one we did last month and the one before, sign up for another webinar in our 10.1 update series at the link listed. We have a webinar coming up in November and a final one in December. So at this time, thank you again, everyone, for your attention and your time in attending our webinar and learning more about BarTender System Database and BarTender 2019. At this time, we'll open it up for questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. So yeah, we're going to start taking your questions now. If you haven't had a chance to submit your question, go ahead and do so right now. Again, if we can't get to your question live today, or if it requires a bit more delving into, we'll follow up with you via email. And so, like Manny said, we did have a question come in saying, I have Designer 2019 R3. Is there a newer version? And that answer is yes. We do have a newer version of BarTender 2019. And again, you can download that from the customer portal. And then another question we had come in is, can we still print from the web if our templates are stored in our own database or network location?
So it definitely depends on the configuration, but at a high level, yes. So printing from the web would mean that you have a custom application or you're printing from Print Portal. Now, either can be configured to look at librarian directories or local directories on the server to print. So it just depends on the use case and specifically where they're at. But at a high level, yes, that is possible.
Awesome. And then another question we had is, what BarTender System Database logging or functionality is supported in the professional edition of BarTender 2019?
So everything that we really talked about today is really going to be the automation and the enterprise edition of the software. While I believe the Pro still installs it and it still does to some degree just some config files and things like that, you're not going to have any of like the librarian, the reprint stuff or anything like that unless you're in the automation or the enterprise edition.
Awesome. And then, can we turn off comments in Librarian?
Yes, you can. In the admin, under the admin tab, there should be a checkbox to disable that and not require comments. It's just a simple checkbox, require comments. I think I want to say it's called.
Here we have this question. We have integrations with our 10.1 install. Can we install 2019 and go through the installation and leave 10.1 running side by side while we test 2019?
Yes, but the big thing is not on the same PC. And the not on the same PC thing is not a licensing thing, it's actually a technical thing. So as the versions share install directories and register keys and things alike, you're not able to have more than one version on a piece of on a particular PC. Now, there are some weird ways to get around it, but we really don't support it and it's just not suggested or recommended. You're gonna run into stability issues sooner or later. So to save yourself the headache, one version of BarTender per PC, and you can run them side by side, assuming you have maintenance and you call in your provisional activation. If you don't have maintenance, reach out to our sales team or to your local partner or Siegel Scientific directly, and we'll help you out with that.
Awesome. And then, is there a document to assist with upgrading?
Let me follow up on that. I don't believe there's a specific document on this. I may be incorrect, but if not, for sure, we're going to be following up with a link to the recording, the PowerPoint slides, and just some general information of what was covered today. So you'll have this minimum as a resource. And if there is a resource that I can't recall off the top of my head, I'll be sure to reach out and send that.
Awesome. And then another question we have is, currently I have BarTender 2016. Will technical support for this version also end after December 31st?
No, 2016 will still be supported. I don't believe we have an end of date or end of life yet for BarTender 2016, so you're still good for that deadline. So 2016 is still supported past New Year's.
Awesome. The next question we have is there a cost to upgrade from 10.1 to 2019?
If you have maintenance, it's actually free to upgrade, and you can also call in the provisional activation if I meant that I mentioned to find out like kind of what the best scenario is for you. Like, do you need to purchase a license outright? Do you need to purchase maintenance, or some combination of that? I would reach out to your partner or to, once again, to Siegel Scientific sales team directly, and we can definitely help you out with that. But it ranges from free on maintenance to purchasing a new license.
Awesome. So another question we are on an ERP system connected to BarTender. When we upgrade, will the existing labels work, allowing the operation to continue?
The BarTender documents, the BTWs, are backwards compatible. So as long as you're coming from, technically it's like 7.7.5, but I want to say it's the 7.7.5 version 8 era of BarTender or newer. You can open those labels and use them in BarTender 2019. As with anything, the environment's going to change. You're probably dealing with a drastic change in operating system and drivers and all that. So because there's such a drastic change to the environment, follow our best practices and test them, but they are fully backwards compatible.
Awesome. And so that actually reaches the end of our questions. We did have some additional questions come in again about where you can download BarTender 2019. Again, you can access that in the customer portal. And what we'll go ahead and do is we'll send that link in the follow-up email. And also in that follow-up email, you'll receive a recording to this webinar as well as the presentation slides. And if there aren't any further questions, we're going to go ahead and end today. But of course, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to us, and we can't wait to see you at our next webinar in November. Thank you so much, and we hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.